Talking Baseball, a show in which we talk about baseball. I'm Pete Lincoln, and once again with me,
I'm Jason Smith, and happy holiday weekend to all of you. We're shooting this on the 4th of July weekend, so happy belated holiday.
Statistics. Statistics drive baseball more than any other sport. In fact, it's gotten to a point where they almost become the sport. Fantasy baseball depends completely on statistics. Managers and club owners look at statistics doing determinations. Statistics in the back of all the baseball cards. Kids relate to people and the rewards are given by statistics. So we thought it might be a good show to deal with statistics.
Yeah, especially in a sport where it's pretty exclusive to baseball that you could look at someone and say, 406. Oh, that's Ted Williams' batting average, the last person hit 400. You wouldn't look at a football fan and say, 228. Well, that's Tom Brady's, QB rating for the day or anything like that. It's really exclusive to baseball that it's so statistic driven and so minute too. It's not like basketball. Okay, shots put up, shots missed, shots taken. Baseball is category after category after category of all this insane stuff of how the batting and the pitching is broken down.
And most players get a somewhat equal opportunity to derive those statistics. Every offensive player has to come to bat. In basketball, there are some fellas that never take a shot. In soccer, there's the goalie. And so you get known by not only what you've achieved, but what you may soon achieve. When Jeter got his 3,000th hit, it was a national occasion. Everyone cut in to see, is he going to get the 3,000th hit? It's just another hit. But because the statistics are so vital to baseball, and they are somewhat common season after season after season, that to determine certain records in baseball becomes quite noteworthy.
And it's even interesting to see how the stats have evolved over the years too. It used to be batting average, home run, RBIs, and that was about it. And now we get into things like OPS and WAR and fielding independent pitching and all this other stuff that sort of it gives you a better perspective of how a player performs. But when all's said and done, it's basically the nitty-gritty, down and dirty, basic 5 stats for pitchers and batters that it has been for 150 years.
If you're a working member of the press, they'll give you a 25-page packet of stats for that game. How he did against lefties in day games, what his batting average is when he has a slight temperature on AstroTurf. It's just insane, the number of stats. And if you ever listen to someone like Vin Scully, you'll hear all 25 pages.
Yeah, right.
Cites them all the way through the game.
But, and that's something that, again, as the years have gone on, that managers have used that to their advantage a ton. Perfect example, current day. Look at Big Papi. Brian Mattis is a relief pitcher for the Orioles, and I think he's 2 for 26 in his career off Brian Mattis. So every time they play the Orioles, Mattis comes in and he gets Ortiz out. And that's statistics. That's something you might stick in your mind, oh, he does well against this guy, which is what it was for a long, long time, until it was entered into computers or whatever. But now you have this right at your fingertips.
That's the key word, the computers. You can enter all sorts of data now. Earl Weaver was one of the first to use these, but he had little index cards, and he would refer to how this guy did something that someone had written down by hand and kept track of. But with computers now, you can figure insane, just do a sort for this, sort for that. So what we thought we might do for a show tonight is talk about what we consider to be unbreakable records. Records are made to be broken, and perhaps some of these will be. And a lot of records, such as Babe Ruth's 60 home run record, they didn't think anyone could ever break, but it eventually was. But these are our suggestions of records that probably won't be broken, at least not in the conceivable future.
For foreseeable future. And we're talking modern day baseball. I mean, obviously, to me, the most unassailable record of all is Cy Young's 511 wins. No one's ever going to touch that. But it was the dead ball era. The game was played completely differently. Pitchers pitched a whole complete game every time they pitched. So it's sort of not relevant to today's game, those old pitching records especially.
Off the top of my head, I think someone pitched 450 innings one year. A guy won 41 games one year and lost 12. And lost the pennant on a wild pitch the last. So we're gonna eliminate the pitching stats from the dead ball era.
And one hitting you can eliminate is triples, because in the old days the parks didn't have fences, and your power was measured by triples more than anything. And you know, the league leader in triples has about 15 now, and it used to be 40 back in the dead ball era because you could just hit a ball and run forever. So irrelevant statistics like that to the current game we're just sort of
Actually
throwing
interesting.
out.
The doubles record is held by Earl Webb in 1931 for the Red Sox. You'd think that record could be broken, but
No one ever has.
That's still held.
But anyway.
How about doing the trivia first?
Oh yeah, we'll kick
first.
off with a trivia like we always do. So as always, we have our JV question and our varsity question. So our JV question is, you might know this, who holds the Red Sox record for the most consecutive hit streaks? Hits in the most consecutive games. And you might not know that one. It's a pretty prominent player for the Red Sox. But who has the longest hit streak for the team? But the varsity question is, and you may know this one too, but we'll see. You might be able to remember it. Who holds the Red Sox record, or the Major League record, for grounding into the most double plays in one season? You probably have a pretty good guess at that, but we'll fill you in at the end of the show.
You may have seen him on TV recently.
Yes, the great dresser. So
those are trivia questions. Once again, if you get these questions
no
right,
Googling.
you can make a guest appearance on our show and no Googling.
No Googling at all. So we're going to kick off with a record that I don't think is ever going to be broken. And again, it goes back to the stats of the dead ball era not being relevant to today. The relief pitching over the years has changed so much that the complete game is almost extinct right now. Buchholz pitched a complete game yesterday. It was the first one the Red Sox had pitched all year, and they're halfway through the season. Now, if you go back 30 years, Catfish Hunter had 30 complete games in one season.
Right.
So the bullpen now is more relevant than ever. But this statistic completely blows away anything that current relievers would ever do. In 1974 for the Dodgers, Mike Marshall, as a relief pitcher, appeared in 106 games. Now, there are only 162 games in a season you could possibly appear in. He pitched in 106 games for a total of 208 innings. He outpitched most starters' innings out of the bullpen. And just to put in perspective how far ahead of everyone else he is, the number 2 person that's actually tied. Here's a great trivia if you know this one. Kent Tekulve had 94 games in 1979, and more recently, 2006, Solomon Torres pitched in 94 games for the Pirates. Go figure that one out. And in case you're curious, the Red Sox record is Mike Timlin. In 2005, he was in 81 games, which is exactly half the season. But in the current game where relief pitchers are so valued, a manager would never abuse a relief pitcher like that. Look at the contracts that relief pitchers are getting right now. Andrew Miller, perfect example.
Right.
Got this insane contract for the Yankees, and they didn't even know he was going to be their closer. It was for a middle relief guy that they gave him this contract for. And you would never endanger a long-term contract like that for a good relief pitcher by putting him in 106 games. So that's one record that I don't think is ever going to get broken.
Especially now that relief pitchers are paid so much.
Yes.
Relief pitchers for a long time were starters that couldn't cut it as a starter, so they moved them into the bullpen, especially back in the pre-war times.
Oh, sure.
Or someone who was come in just as a lefty against a lefty or a righty against a righty, a specialist, but they can't take the risk of blowing out an arm of a guy. And there are very few relievers that full-time relievers that last very long anyway.
Yeah.
That's why someone like Rivera or Hoffman was so remarkable that they could pitch 15, 16 seasons without being sidelined by an injury.
Yeah, and Mike Marshall pitched 14 years, so he had a pretty good career as a reliever, and he did lead the league in appearances 5 different times in those 14 years, so this wasn't just a one-off fluke year. He did win the Cy Young Award that year, too, in 1974, but if you're really curious about fitness and the mechanics of pitching, he has a website, and he's, I think, in his 70s now, and still gives just a clinic on how to throw a pitch a certain way and how to stay fit to pitch it in a certain number of games, because he never had any arm issues at all, never broke down. And he has his own web, I think it's just mikemarshall.net or something.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, if you take a look at it, it's a fascinating website.
And if there's any fans out there of Jim Bouton's great baseball book, Ball 4, Mike Marshall pitched for the '69 Seattle Pilots, and is featured quite prominently both for his abilities and what he had to say to people.
Yeah.
So continuing on with pitching,
Yeah.
the second pitching record I don't believe will ever be broken is Johnny Vandermeer's 2 consecutive no-hitters. Now I say that, and just very recently, Max Scherzer pitched a one-hitter, a no-hitter, and had a perfect game in the next game, going 6 2/3 innings. I still think that's probably something very, very unlikely to be broken.
Johnny Vandermeer became a baseball immortal when he pitched 2 consecutive no-hit games. On a June afternoon, he shut out Boston 3-0 and returned to the mound 4 days later to beat Brooklyn 6-0. The record has not been equaled.
One no-hitter is a fluke, and it's lucky. 2 consecutive is extraordinary. He did this in 1938, and he was not really a fluke pitcher. He won 119 and lost 121. 3 times consecutively, he led the league in strikeouts, which has only been done by Lincecum, Spahn, Randy Johnson, and Dizzy Dean. So he was no fluke pitcher, but the 2 consecutive strikeouts, one in the first night game ever played in Brooklyn, was remarkable.
So you'd have to pitch 3 straight no-hitters to break that record,
right.
Which is never going to happen. Nowadays, people don't even pitch 3 complete games in a row, let alone
the season.
Yeah, the season, right? Go back to Buckholz, just had the first one for the entire team yesterday. So another one, going back to the whole relief pitching and how relief has changed over the years. This is one I'm sure you remember from mid-2002 to mid-2004. A guy named Eric Gagne for the Dodgers, who was later notorious when he joined the Red Sox. Well, won't talk about that very much. He went 84 consecutive save opportunities without blowing a save. He went all of 2003, 55 consecutive saves without blowing a single one. The runner-up was Tom Gordon when he was with the Red Sox. He had 54. Gagne broke that by 30. So he had a whole other season's worth of saves past what Gordon already did. It's pretty remarkable. His 2002 through 2004 stats are off the charts. I remember going back to how we talk about how stats are important. I think he had the record for the most valuable fantasy season in history in 2003. It was absurd. 82 innings and 137 strikeouts. And the funny thing is, later on, it was found out that he was in the Mitchell Report, and he admitted to using steroids.
2007 Mitchell Report. Yeah. And as you might figure, with a person on steroids, he broke down.
He did.
And
sure did.
Shortly after he'd set this record, he was out for a season and a half, and then he made a brief comeback with Texas, was traded to the Red Sox disastrously, went from there to the Brewers.
Brewers.
Should have been with the Brewers.
Yeah, do better. Do better, yeah. And that was it. He was done. He broke these records in 2004, and 2008 was his last season. He was out of baseball after that. So that's how quickly, especially relief pitcher, we're talking about Rivera and Hoffman. That's how remarkable it is that they had the long careers that they did. That's what happens with
He's
relief
still
pitchers.
just 39 years old and is long past his prime. But that 84 consecutive saves was extraordinary. I don't think anybody will break that.
That's extraordinary. And think about all the times you're brought in to protect a 1-run lead, and especially somewhere like Fenway, somebody hits a 302 opposite field foot homer into the right field corner. That's all it takes to blow a save, or an error, or just some bad call, or anything. It's extraordinary that he did that.
Well, sometimes they'll bring a guy in with the bases loaded and nobody out. Yeah. So he has to hold a situation like that. A guy hits a fly ball and he loses the save. Yeah. It's a blown save, even though
it wasn't his fault.
The predicament wasn't his fault. Yeah. And then on the other hand, with saves, this is how the whole save concept is overrated. Yeah. You can get a save just by coming in the 7th inning and pitching the last 3 innings of the game, no matter what the score is. Yeah. You can come in with, you're ahead by 3 runs and you pitch the last out of the 9th inning and get a save. And managers have been known to inflate guys' saves by just bringing them in pretty easy save situations.
And no knock against Rivera, but I remember they did that one time. They had a 5-run lead with 2 outs in the 9th and the bases were loaded, and they brought him in to face 1 batter, and he got a save for a 5-run lead.
And for instance, Koji always does better when he comes in a clean inning. Start the 9th. When he comes in with men on base, he's going to pitch from a stretch. It's a whole different situation. So the save concept, which is relatively new to baseball anyway, it's kind of an odd stat.
It is. Yeah, it seems very random for when you can come in and get a save, and especially when you figure it's a lot of the time the 7th and 8th inning guys that come into the mess and they have to clean up the mess that the starter left or somebody was ineffective. A lot of times they're actually a better pitcher than the closer, but the closer gets the save.
A few managers will bring a closer in earlier in the game if it's his best pitch, you'll bring him in the 7th or the 8th inning to get out of a predicament, and then have someone else mop up after that. But not too many managers do.
Yeah, I know. Frank Conan did that with Folk a couple times in the playoffs. He brought him in way early in the game just
And what's
to
the
get him out of a
reason?
mess.
They pay the relievers more than they play the guy in the middle. So.
Sure. Yeah.
Here's one I think we can really be confident is never ever going to be broken. Nolan Ryan once again.
Strikeouts. Jose Canseco was number 4,995. Dave Henderson, number 4,996. Tony Phillips, number 4,997. Ricky Henderson became number 4,998. And Ron Hasse, 4,999. Leading off the 5th for Oakland was Ricky Henderson. Tension mounted with each pitch as the count reached 3-2. Would Henderson be strikeout number 5,000? Reaching back a bit extra, Ryan came in with his money pitch, the big heat.
He struck him out swinging. Strikeout number 5,000 is history for Nolan Ryan.
Nolan Ryan's total career strikeouts, 5,714 career Ks. Number 2 is Randy Johnson, 4,875, and Roger Clemens is number 3, 4,672, nearly 1,000 short of the record. The active leader is CC Sabathia with 2,520, less than half of the record, less than half. What that amounts to is, if a pitcher came into the major leagues this year, we bring up this kid Johnston from Pawtucket.
Yeah.
He pitches 22 years, and every one of those 22 years he strikes out 250 guys, he'll still be short of the record by 200. That's 22 years. So in the late 50s, he didn't make it. He's been doing it all that time.
Yeah.
It's just an extraordinary record. We sang his praises to the skies last week about no-hitters. The strikeout record is just unbeatable, and that's one record I think we can say of all the records the major leagues is least likely to be broken.
That's right. And he was still doing it at age 46. He was still striking out 200 guys every year at age 46. Extraordinary. You're never going to see that again. How many make it to 46 as a starter?
Right.
I mean, it's pretty rare even as a reliever to see a 46-year-old guy, but as a starter, unless you're like the Negro knuckleballer type, you're not going to hang around in the majors that long.
Okay, let's switch over to offense.
Switch over to the offense.
Okay, switch over to offense.
So number 1, and actually this has been in the news recently for all the wrong reasons. One of the hitting records that we don't think will ever get topped is Pete Rose's record of most career hits.
And Rose takes it inside. He levels the bat a couple of times. Shao kicks and he fires. Rose swings. There it is! There it is! Get out! Get out! All right! Hit number 4192.
The moment was overwhelming. Pete's brother David put his arms around his mother. They embraced and cried for the next several minutes. The Reds players came out of the dugout. They hoisted their hero manager onto their shoulders. And there was a love affair at Riverfront Stadium between those in the stands and number 14, who had just conquered one of baseball's greatest records. Owner Marge Schott came out, hugged Rose, and presented him with a new Corvette, license number 4192, of course.
At 4,256 career hits. Broke Ty Cobb's record of 4,189. The next one down is Hank Aaron, who had 3,700, and he's a few hundred ahead of number 4. The three of them are way ahead of anyone else. And to put it in perspective, think about 4,000 hits. You'd have to play 22 years at 200 hits a season.
And nobody gets 200 hits a season.
Nobody does anymore. Nobody. It's what, 2 or 3 guys every year might get 200
Maybe.
hits anymore.
Possibly.
Maybe. And you'd have
Ichiro did.
yeah, Ichiro,
Ichiro did.
but you'd have to do that for 22 years in a row to break Rose's record. And put that in perspective for current players. A-Rod is the current leader. He has just a shade over 3,000. So he'd have to get 1,200 more hits. So we need 6 straight seasons of 200 hits more to Ty Rose.
Well, he may.
He might. Yeah, I don't think so. But that's just an extraordinary stat to have that kind of longevity and to stay at that peak. I mean, you have guys occasionally like Julio Franco who will play till like their mid to late 40s and hang around as a utility guy. But Pete Rose was a starter his entire career and kept up that level of hitting. It's extraordinary.
Utility is exactly the word, because they'll keep him around because he's a great defensive shortstop.
Sure.
Or maybe like a Brock Holt can
Sure.
play several different positions, and so he may get a couple hundred bats a season tops, but he's never going to be at that age, play every day. You can't do it. Physically, you just can't do it.
Yeah, and it's too bad that Pete Rose has been in the news lately for the wrong reasons, because again, we talked about this before, how it diminishes his accomplishments, and what he brought to baseball is just, it's a shame that the baseball can't put him into the Hall of Fame in some capacity for the records that he set.
I'm not going to go over the museum thing again.
No,
But it's a museum.
Yeah, it's a museum. Watch a previous episode if you want to fill in on that.
Okay, now here's another extraordinary record, an extraordinary fellow. I wish someone would write a really good biography of this character. Rickey Henderson. Rickey Henderson holds the lifetime steal record, 1,456 steals.
Luke Brock was the symbol of great base stealing. But today, I'm the greatest of all time. Thank you.
The number 2 man is Lou Brock with 938, and the long-time stolen base leader was Ty Cobb. And this is kind of an interesting stat. He was always recorded as having 892 steals. That was the benchmark for the most steals in a season. With all this business about research into statistics, they discovered that Ty Cobb had 3 steals in a game that was recorded twice. So it cost him 3 steals, so his total now is 897. But you figure now, Lou Brock is over 500, 1/3 of the distance short of Henderson's steals. And Henderson wasn't just a base runner.
No, he was.
I think doesn't he have the record for the most leadoff homers?
Leadoff homers in a game. Yeah, it's 22, I think.
And
Yeah.
what he did, and we saw Henderson play frequently.
Yeah.
He was disruptive.
Oh,
He would get on first base, and the pitcher would throw over and over and over, and whether he was steal or not, by the time the pitcher threw over, he would hassle him so much that he wouldn't be concentrating on the batter. He was just a disruptor. He was the ultimate leadoff batter.
Yeah. And he never struck out either.
That's right.
He would hang in there at 3 and 2, foul off, foul off, foul off. And I think he's the most all-time walks in a career too. So he walked a ton, got a ton of hits, was always on base, and just to have that, he's almost like a mosquito buzzing behind you when you're trying to pitch. He's just such a distraction. And he was also a legendary, just space shot out there kind of guy.
He talked about himself in the third person.
Yeah.
Well, when Rickey gets on base, Rickey has to do this.
He's just a great character. There's a great story about when he first went to the Padres, I think, and he was on the bus with all the rookies in spring training, just shooting the breeze with them, and some of the veterans said, hey, Rickey, you have tenure. You don't have to sit up at the front of the bus. Says, Rickey don't have tenure. Rickey have 18 years. So that's the kind of guy that Rickey was. He's just an extraordinary character.
And there's a little clip we'll put in at the end of this conversation where he steals the base that breaks the record, and he holds up the base and proclaims loudly, "I am now the greatest of all time."
Yeah, it's great, and you still see that clip on
All
MLB
the time.
Network. It's a great, it's one of the great clips of baseball.
And he played for 8 different teams.
And he went back to the Padres and the A's 2 or 3 times apiece.
That's right.
Yeah, and he was a 25-year career,
That's right.
and he was still stealing into his 40s. He was still leading the league.
He played briefly with the Red Sox, but he was not a detriment.
No, not at all.
He played very well.
Not at all.
And that record, I think, especially the stolen base, at least in this era, is not something they focus on. The Red Sox forgot what SB means. It means stay without budging, I think.
Well, it's that whole fantasy mentality and news stats of you don't want to make an out because the game doesn't have a clock. The only clock to the game is making outs. So if there's a risk of making an out, managers aren't going to do that. So you don't get the automatic green light like these guys had in the 70s and 80s.
And two, they're paying the big money to the home run hitters now.
Sure.
And nobody wants to steal in front of Ortiz because it disrupts him. Or if they steal second, they'll intentionally walk him. So there's no advantage to doing that.
Sure.
So at least for the foreseeable time, the stolen base is not a stat that is going to be focused on, and so this record is pretty safe.
And Ichiro is the current leader. I think he just has about 500. He's a third of the way there to Henderson, and he's the active leader. It's just unbreakable. It's never going to happen. So, speaking of unbreakable ones, this is maybe the most famous one, probably in all the sports, not just baseball.
Right.
And it's unbreakable for a few reasons, and we're going to talk about Joe DiMaggio's 56-game hit streak.
It got some recognition after my 30th some odd game, and it wasn't thought very much of then, but it gained momentum, and after, of course, the 40th game, why it built up to such a crescendo that the pressure started to apply to me. We generally walk to the ballpark from the Cleveland Hotel to the municipal grounds, which is only about a 6-block walk. However, we decided to take a cab this particular day, and as entering the cab, the fellow looked over at me and he says, "Aren't you Joe?" And I said, "Yes." He said, "You know, I got a feeling you're going to be stopped tonight." It was a night game, and well, Lefty liked to climb all over the fellow. He felt very bad about the whole incident throughout that night because he had felt the jinx was put upon me. We started a little bit of a rally one inning, and they brought in Jim Bagby, a relief pitcher, and there was a man on first base, and I was at bat with 1 out, and I hit a ball to the left of Lou Boudreau, who was managing the ball club, who was playing shortstop. And as going to field the ball took a bad hop, and he got his glove up in time and threw to second base and completed the double play, and that's how that streak was broken.
In 1941. That means he got a base hit in 56 consecutive games, which by itself is an amazing accomplishment. The number 2 streak behind him is Pete Rose. Pete Rose had a 44-game hit streak in the sometime early 80s, I think it was. But for a streak like that, and it's a day-to-day streak, it's not like these other ones we've talked about where it's a career achievement. Having the media pressure on you day to day to keep up with that is I can't conceive of that.
Especially in New York.
In New York, of all places.
No, if he's playing Minnesota, there's only 2 announcers.
Yeah, but to have that pressure on you day after day after day to get some kind of base hit, I just can't fathom having that many people follow your day-to-day activities. I mean, all these career ones, they sort of sneak up on you, actually, a lot of these career ones. I mean, sort of say, okay, he accomplished it, and that's it. But day in and day out, to just have excellence every day. I mean, say he had the flu one day, okay, you go 0 for 3 and your streak's over. Or you go 0 for 2 and you walk 3 times. I mean, just to have a hit like that in 56 consecutive games is incredible.
And another little asterisk to that, when his streak was broken, it was out in Cleveland, and Ken Keltner was pitching.
Yes.
He was just an average pitcher. No, I'm sorry, Jim Bagby was pitching. Keltner was playing third base. He made 2 phenomenal stabs of line drives to break the streak. The next day, he started a 16-game hitting streak. So without that stab, the streak would have been, what's that, 73 consecutive games?
And especially, in this day of age with modern baseball, where you're encouraged to work a walk. You know, that was not a valued stat.
And with his relief pitchers.
And with relief pitchers.
DiMaggio was not facing guys that came in through 100 miles an hour for 1 at bat either. So
yeah, he wasn't. You'd get that pitcher the 3rd, 4th, 5th time even. Sometimes you'd see him, and the starter would be at 140 something pitches. Well, that's a heck of a lot easier to get a hit off a guy than somebody who's fresh throwing 100 miles an hour out of the bullpen.
I mean, it's obviously not easier, but the chances are way improved than they were.
Sure, yeah, and
there were very few night games, so the weather wasn't bad. No West Coast games, so the travel wasn't as distant. It was just wear and tear physically to have to put up with that.
I think the longest in my lifetime was Molitor's. I think Molitor had like a 38 game.
39.
39. And every day it was like, did Molitor get a hit? Did Molitor get a hit?
Right.
And this was, you know, ESPN was it was a sports channel, but it wasn't the monster that it is now. You don't have 10 sports channels reporting on stuff. And even then, it was the day-to-day pressure to do that was extraordinary. I can't imagine having 20 networks follow you around every day as you're doing that.
I remember, too, when Rose's streak was finally broken down in Atlanta, he gave a press conference, was very upset that the Atlanta pitchers were trying to get him out. I've got this great streak going. They should have, given me better pitches to hit. That's Pete Rose.
Yeah, that's it for it. Yeah.
Well, the last one is not only a record that will never be broken, it's a record that never should be broken and never should have accomplished in the first place. And that, of course, is Cal Ripken's consecutive games played.
As a group, the Yankees left the dugout, gave Cal Ripken an ovation of their own out of respect, which was a very classy maneuver. And now the fans rise as one. Sensing what's happened, this may last a while.
Yep. It should. Hopefully not as long as the streak did, though.
Played 2,632 consecutive games. That's, how many seasons does that work out to?
20.
Without missing a single game. He broke Lou Gehrig's famous record. Now, Lou Gehrig was playing again in the 1920s. He did it during the seasons where the Yankees were great. He was hitting behind Babe Ruth. He was never hurt or injured, and he was the captain of the team. He's played in 2,130. So that record was broken by 500, or 3 seasons more. And when Gehrig played occasionally, he would come in just as a pinch hitter, or he played the first inning and pull himself out. At one point, Cal Ripken played every inning of 5 consecutive games.
And Gehrig was a first baseman. Ripken did it as a shortstop, third baseman towards the end, but mostly as a shortstop. Which, think about the wear and tear on your body playing a shortstop every single day. And think about, you get, like I said before, you get the flu, you pull a muscle, you have a bloody nose, or anything that would take you out of the lineup that day.
And I think Gehrig's lifetime average was about 340 when Ripken's was probably 70 points lower. He was a very good hitter, but he was not a superstar hitter. He probably had a 275, 280 lifetime average. Some of those seasons, he was maybe 260. And he also prevented a lot of upcoming guys from ever getting in a game at all to do that.
After a while, I think it just turned into sort of a respect thing rather than his ability. You know, nobody dared take him out of the lineup after a while.
Remember, his dad was the manager.
Yeah, that helped too.
He's not going to say, son, you're going to sit
down. But you do have to give him credit that when the streak did end, he didn't make a big deal about it. He just didn't appear in the lineup that day.
He took himself out.
Yeah.
It's time to stop.
Yeah, the lineup was posted for the day, and it sort of dawned on people when his name wasn't in the lineup that the streak was over.
And also, he was an iconic ball player. No hint of any bad dealings. He was a great guy. He's a great spokesman for baseball. And so by doing this streak, he was a model. I've said often, I don't think baseball players should be a role model for kids, but his work ethic was a role model for everybody, not just ball players.
Yeah. And he was with the Orioles through some pretty dark days, too.
Right.
You know, they won the World Series in '83, but it was a good 15 years before they were relevant as a team.
Remember the season they started out 0-21?
Yeah.
And his dad got fired?
Yeah. Yeah, the late 80s, early 90s Orioles teams were, he was about the only thing worth watching on those teams. They were really terrible. But he was there also when Baltimore, again, became relevant by the whole move into Camden Yards, and it sort of, it brought back that old ballpark feel. You know, the ballparks in the 70s and 80s were very multi-purpose. They were very sterile, AstroTurf, cookie-cutter parks.
Right.
And Camden brought about that whole change in the ballparks, and he was the face of the team at that point, too. So, it goes back to he's an icon, and no one, I don't think anyone just dared take him out. Yeah, because after a while, it was sort of his persona, was the streak.
And look at after his streak and Gehrig's streak, number 3 is Everett Scott, who played for the Red Sox, 1,307, which is 13, it's half as many.
Yeah.
The next one was Steve Garvey, 1,207. He was hurt, so he had to come out. And currently, the longest streak was Evan Longoria, 270, and he just got hurt.
And Miguel Cabrera just got hurt too. He had a streak for I think a year and a half, and he's out for 6 weeks too. So there's nobody even, I don't think anybody's even in triple digits at this point who's active.
I don't think there's a Red Sox that's played every game this year.
No. It's, you know, and again, it goes back to the big contracts. You don't want these guys to risk an injury, so you sit them out, or there's a tough lefty going that day, and you don't want to, you want to put somebody else in the lineup. there's too much of a risk factor.
Farrell is famous for just sitting a guy down to give him a day off. Even when he's doing well, you sit Pedroia down just because he wants to give him a break. So his consecutive games is also an antique, except that the record was set in our very recent lifetime.
Yeah, fairly recently.
So I think that's the ultimate unbreakable record, and I think it should be stayed that
Oh,
way.
absolutely. I'd be amazed if anyone even hit 4 digits with a consecutive game streak the way the game's played now.
So that's our top 8 records unlikely to be broken. But as I said at the top of the show, records are made to be broken.
Yes.
So here's our predictions. Anybody who's watched our show constantly know we were pretty right on Pedro making the wall of retired numbers. You heard it here first.
Karnak the Magnificent.
Right. So here's our predictions for the 2 top records that are most likely to be broken in the not too distant future.
So my pick for a record that may be broken fairly soon, and again it goes back into the whole idea of how relief pitching has changed. The single season save record is 62, set by Frankie Rodriguez when he was with the Angels. He broke, the old record was 57 by Bobby Thigpen, who was sort of a one-year wonder actually. Right. And he did that in the early 90s, so that record stood for about 20 years. But
his name is K-Rod, Frankie Rodriguez. And when Mike Scioscia asked him, here is what Frankie says. Yes, coach, I feel just fine. I'm ready to get out there and pitch inning 9. K-Rod pitches for the Angels of LA. No matter how much he's thrown, he's ready right away to stand on the mound with a nice big grin and strike out opponents and nail down a win. If you're losing to the Angels and the game is late, you don't have a chance coming up to the plate.
But the way relief pitching is now, we were talking about the big contracts that relief pitchers get. Closers now come in for 1 inning and that's it. You know, it's not like the days of Bruce Sutter and Goose Gossage, Tug McGraw, when you let him pitch the last 3-4 innings of the game. Now you're a specialist, you're in for 1 inning and that's it. And the way that pitching is now, the offense is at an all-time low. So there are a lot of 3-1, 3-2 close games where you're going to have a closer come in to protect a close game, protect a small lead at the end. And I'm sure there'll be somebody some year that'll come in and pitch 70 save opportunities and go 65 for 70 and break that 62 save season record. It just, a lot of the relief pitchers, I think more than any other subset of records, the relief pitching records are the most volatile, except for Marshall's, of course. Yeah. But the relief pitching records are almost constantly being broken because that's the way the game is played now. The starters are expected to go 5, and you hand it to the bullpen from that point on.
And the long relievers, closers, I think particularly the Red Sox and Bob Stanley, even more Dick Raditz. Mm-hmm. Dick Raditz had an 8 1/3 relief stint once against the Yankees. Mm-hmm. And he got the win out of that. Yeah. He had 15 wins along with all the saves he had. And so that they have the middle relief guys that are standing 2 or 3 innings, but they're not closers. Mm-hmm. And the guys that come in to close the game, get a chance to pitch more frequently.
Yeah, and we were talking about how a lot of the times managers will pad save stats too. It's some really easy saves. So I think that's something you'll be seeing. We'll see that broken in our lifetimes. Absolutely.
The one I like to talk about, it sort of reminds me of the 4-minute mile. The 4-minute mile was considered to be an unbreakable possible barrier. And then Roger Bannister broke it, and then John Landy broke it, and then he beat John Landy. And now I think the 4-minute mile is down below 350.
I think 348,
so something like that. So it just creeps lower and lower. The record I'd like to talk about is the most strikeouts in a game, which is dear to our hearts because we were present when it was set at 20 by Roger Clemens in 1986.
Tiger fans showing their appreciation of quite a feat here at Tiger Stadium.
He ties his own record 10 years later from April 1986 on September 1996.
The fact that it's been tied 3 times since then. Clemens himself, of course, did it in 96, I think.
96,
the Tigers. Mm-hmm. And then Randy Johnson did it.
What's he done? but none would be bigger than number 20 here tonight. 2-2 to Castro. Randy Johnson has tied the Major League record for strikeouts in a 9-inning game. 20 for the big unit.
And then Kerry Wood did it as a rookie, striking out 20.
Here comes the hook. Got him! 20 strikeouts! He ties the Major League record!
Striking out a ton of players in the game isn't always wise because it means you throw a lot more pitches. But I think sooner or later someone's going to come along, getting a team in a week time. When Clemens broke the record against Seattle, they had struck out 16 the game before, flew all night to get across here from Seattle, and were playing a game where they were pooped and tired against a guy with a wicked fastball on a rainy, gloomy night. So if the circumstances were, when he did it the second time, it was against the very end of the season against the lousy Tigers.
The Tigers were awful that year.
So if the combination of circumstances, I think that probably will be broken. Some fireball that comes in and has a good day against a bad team, and 21 strikeouts. In fact, in both Clemens' games, no, the first game and I think Wood's game, the last guy did not strike out.
And Johnson's too. Johnson's, I think, the last three guys
20
didn't strike
in
out.
8 2/3 innings, so it could have been a possibility.
And again, it ties back into the whole how the game has changed. Back in DiMaggio's time, strikeout was the worst thing you could do as a batter. In the current game, strikeouts don't matter. It's just seen as another out. I mean, think of all the strikeout seasons, strikeout batter records that have been broken in the last 10 years. It keeps getting topped. It was 200, then it was 211. Mark Reynolds, I think, had 212 one year, and he set the record. A strikeout isn't considered a bad thing. It's just another out.
When Joe DiMaggio had his 56-game streak season, he struck out 15 times.
Think about that.
Napoli does that in a week.
Yeah.
Sorry.
But I think he did this week. But that's another way that the game has changed, is that a strikeout is not considered to be the most horrible thing you can do. It's just another out. And so that only helps the pitchers.
And the long ball is king. You don't hit long balls just to swing hard. Usually with 2 strikes, Ty Cobb talks about in his book, he would always choke up. He would never swing for the long ball with 2 strikes because you put the ball in play. So somebody strikes out 200 times a year. If he put the ball in play 200 times a year, just by average, say he's a 250 hitter, that means he's going to get 50 more hits. There's a chance for errors, there's just chances for misplays, moving the runners along, setting up sacrifice flies. But it's just the current mentality is the strikeout is if somebody, I don't think they're very concerned about a guy.
They're not. No, they're not. No, they're not. No, and that's something that I probably should have put in the likely to be broken is strikeouts in the season. I think it's 212 is the record, and you'll see that get bypassed pretty soon.
Probably.
No.
I think like Mike Trout, MVP. I think he had 190 strikeouts.
He did.
Yes,
he did. But think about that. The most valuable player in baseball struck out 190
Arguably
times.
the best player in baseball right now. He struck out 190 times. Which would be total of some of the guys in the Hall of Fame.
Oh, yeah, yeah. So do you want to do the book first or the trivia answers?
We'll do the book first. I like to suggest to some of our people out there that still read a book each show, and this book is called Smokey Joe Wood: The Biography of a Baseball Legend. Smokey Joe Wood compiled the best season by a Red Sox pitcher in their history. In 1912, he had a record of 34 wins and 5 losses, and he added 3 more wins in the World Series. He could throw as hard as anyone, and a premier matchup, which they liked to do a lot in the old days. He had a matchup at Fenway Park against Walter Johnson, who even his own time was considered to be the hardest throwing pitcher, and he beat him 1-0. And Johnson said at the time, "There's nobody alive who can throw harder than Joe Wood." Joe Wood, of course, like so often happens, hurt his arm the next year diving for a bunt. And what was remarkable about it was he still was able to pitch on occasion. So he ended up winning quite a few games, but the Sox got rid of him after 2 or 3 years just because he was demanding a higher contract. And he went to Cleveland with his friend Speaker and became an outfielder. And he pitched 5 or 6 more years, played 5 or 6 more years as an outfielder. And there was quite a movement to get him into the Hall of Fame. for a long time. And he lived to be a very, very, very old man. And my wife Debbie and I had the opportunity to meet him at a baseball show in Boston. Encloses the picture that he signed for her with a firm handshake at the age of 92 and 93. And this book, though, is an odd read. Because there was no film of him pitching, because there are no one left alive that saw him pitch, all we have to go by is newspaper accounts. And newspaper in those we've talked about this before. Accounts in those days were purple prose, were written with hyperbole, and they didn't give any warts of anything. So the first 80% of this book is pretty much, in May he did this, and in June he did this, and this game he got 2 hits, and he shut these guys out. So you'd have to be a statistics freak to read through it. In fact, I don't like to skip pages, but I found I was doing that more and more. He was involved in a very famous Game 7 of the World Series in 1912, where the famous Snodgrass's unfortunate muff was made. So there are a lot of details about that that the casual fan may not know. But what is great about the book was that his youngest son, Bob Wood, who we also managed to meet several times selling his paraphernalia, and there's a picture of him as an elderly man in 2008 with my wife at a baseball writers' dinner, preserved his dad's memory. First he carried his father around to shows so people could talk to him, and after he passed away he was sort of sell things related to that era. And he made some lengthy tapes of his dad just reminiscing about the times. So the last 2 or 3 chapters are Joe Wood talking.
That's so cool.
And it is great. It's intimate stuff about the players that played, some of the things that went on behind the scenes. So just for that, if you aren't interested much in early part, or not a particularly Red Sox fan, if you've ever read the book Glory of Our Times, which is old players talking about the past, this should be an extra chapter to it because it's terrific.
Yeah, talk about just how the travel and the way the game was played and the mentality of the players.
And what they did in the off season, it was nothing like keeping in shape or working out or anything.
It worked.
It worked. Or they liked to hunt.
Yeah.
And when he had made enough money, he would travel around with his family. He liked to go home, and he was sort of a homebody. He came from the middle of Pennsylvania, and so he'd have the ball players would come out and hang out.
Yeah.
Especially going on little hunting trips or fishing trips all together as buddies, which doesn't happen anymore.
No, not at all. But yeah, I'm glad you mentioned Glory of Their Times. If you read that, then this would be a great read to follow that up. It's the same idea of just a whole different era of baseball.
And if you're interested in old-time baseball, it's still great baseball, and they're great characters and great people, but because there is no video, and now there's video of every blessed move everybody makes, repeated over and over and over again.
And baseball cards of everybody, you know.
If anybody watched the Red Sox game yesterday, Pablo dove into the bullpen of the, who are they playing?
Who did they beat? The Rays. No, they didn't beat the Rays. Who did they play? The Astros.
Yeah, the Astros.
Popped up, foul ground. Sandoval on the run by the Astros dugout, and the Panda makes the catch and goes over the railing. Sandoval making the grab. He hurt himself in the process. That right eye appears to be a problem.
A nice effort by Pablo Sandoval. Full speed going toward that dugout, and the railings here, fortunately, he's able to make that catch, and it looks like he hit himself in the face.
Somebody else did.
Yeah, like somebody trying to hold him up. Might have got him close to the eye. Looked like a panda trying to get out of the cage, didn't
It
he?
used to be a forgettable team.
Yeah.
They played it at least 10 times during the game. I didn't watch last night, probably 20 more times.
Oh, it was on MLB
The
Network a
highlights,
bunch.
Pablo,
Sure.
who has trouble usually running across the infield, dove into the thing and was protected by the opponent team. But in the old days, they didn't have that. And so you just have to take their word for great plays, great catches. And I'm sure they were. They were playing with lousy fields and lousy equipment and still were able to do some of those things.
And it's, you have to keep the perspective, like you said, of the local newspapers, because a lot of them did not write bad things about players. It was all about the team, and they traveled with the team and they got to know the players, so they didn't say anything bad about them. So, but that's all you have to go on. You kind of have to put that, put that in perspective.
So if you don't get a chance to check out this book, at least read the last three chapters. And Joe Wood is should be a retired number for the Red Sox, except what's the problem with that? They didn't have
They
numbers.
didn't have numbers, so it'll be a big wood right on there.
That's right.
Like the Celtics have a couple names.
Muskie.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, we should need to wrap this up.
So let's
Give us
get
a trivia answer.
So your trivia answers for the day. The JV question: who has the record for the longest Red Sox hitting streak? And the answer is not Joe, but Dom DiMaggio, who in his own right was a terrific ball player, just overshadowed by his brother. They played at the same time. He had a 34-game hit streak in 1949, and I know in my lifetime, Nomar came very close. I think
30.
Nomar hit 30 in
30.
rookie year, 97 or 98 it was. He came very close to eclipsing that, but no one's broken it in almost 60 years.
I know there was a little song they used to sing in the stands. Don DiMaggio, better than his brother Joe. And he was pretty darn good.
He was very good.
He was
Very
funny,
good.
if you've ever seen pictures of him, he was very small, and he was one of the very first players to wear big, thick glasses when he played, and his nickname was the Little Professor.
Yeah.
So how does that compare with the Yankee Clipper?
Yeah, right.
Yankee Clipper. And he didn't look anything like his brother.
Yeah.
Actually, this is something only a real baseball fan would know. They both had an older brother, Vince DiMaggio.
Yes.
That was an all-star, and he held the Pirates strikeout record for quite
Yes,
a
he
while.
did, yes. So nice family genetics right there.
Yeah, right?
So in our varsity question, you may know this because this certainly happened in our lifetimes. The MLB record for grounding into double plays in one season, set by Hall of Famer Jim Rice. In 1984, he grounded into 36 double plays. And after a while, it was almost comical. Whenever, people on base. So here comes a 6-4-3. Here we go.
And as part of the, yeah, they said that should have been his license plate.
Yes.
But an apology to him.
Yeah.
He was hitting behind a good lineup, so always someone on
sure.
base. And he hit the ball hard, and he was a right-handed hitter.
Yeah.
The record for the most double plays grounded into by a lefty, get ready, Carl Yastrzemski. Same thing. Always been on ahead of him. He hit into 30 double plays as a left-handed hitter. So the two all-time double play hit into records are Red Sox.
Well, and when you have guys in front of you like Wade Boggs, who's always on base, or Rick Burleson was ahead of him for a while, Marty Barrett, high on base guys, you're going to hit into a grounder. You're going to hit a grounder at somebody by chance once a game. So if somebody's on base and you're not a fast runner,
And
which
they
he
were both
wasn't.
line drive hitters.
Sure.
They weren't the Williams type or the say Manny type that hits the long fly balls. Hit hard balls on the ground, you can hit it all double plays. But still, it's a record.
It is.
Not an admirable one.
No. But he's in the Hall of Fame, so,
That's right.
he came out okay.
So I hope you enjoyed Unbreakable Records. Maybe you could think of a few yourself. This was episode 7. And what we have in the works for episode 8 is a look at, my wife and I have been to every single major league city where the Red Sox were playing. And Jason here has been to a number of them himself. So we thought it might be fun to get a family show where we talk about our favorite parks and also our least favorite parks. Red Sox Nation is growing and growing, so if you've had some ideas that you'd like to go on a vacation, see the Sox play somewhere, you might take our suggestions and we'll say not only the best parks, but the best cities to enjoy while you're at the parks, to get some sense of the ambience of where they play, and where if you ever get a chance to play yourself, you should have your son go to root for you. So, thanks again.
Signing
Thanks
off.
again. Thanks
See you
again.
at the park.
See you at the park. And see you all anon. Thanks for watching. Bye.